We begin the Gemara today on Daf Lamed Tes Amud Aleph, towards the top of the Amud, 3 lines from the top. The Gemara quotes what it said in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Poiter b'mayim. Rabbi Yehuda said, if a woman is borrowing water to mix into her dough, so then she does not have to take into account for the tchum, the owner of that water. She can just go with the dough to wherever she can go with her tchum. Zog the Gemara mayimin. So from the lashon of the Mishnah, it seems Rabbi Yehuda only argues regarding water, but melach loy, regarding salt, he would agree to the Tanakama that you follow also the tchum of the owner of the salt. So he's only arguing regarding water. Fragt the Gemara, but vatanya in a Beitza we learned Rabbi Yehuda says mayim u melach, whether salt, whether water, betelin, it becomes bottling the ingredients. Bein Beitza, whether it's in a dough, bein b'kedera, whether it's in a pot, whether it's an ingredients of food that you're cooking in a pot. So you see here that Rabbi Yehuda clearly says that just like by water it becomes bottle, so too by salt it becomes bottle in the ingredients, and you don't have to follow the tchum of the one that owned the water or the salt. So the Gemara answers, it depends what kind of salt this is. Like kashya, it's not a contradiction. Ha b'melachs daimis. Over here in the Beitza, it's speaking about salt, which is called melachs daimis, and this is very, very fine salt, and therefore something like this becomes completely bottled in the ingredients. But in the Mishnah, it's speaking about ha b'melach istreiknis. It's speaking about salt, which is more of a coarse salt, and therefore it does not become bottled in the ingredients. That's our Mishnah. So therefore Rabbi Yehuda only argued regarding water, but not regarding the salt, which is more of a coarse salt. This is Rashi's pshat, and Rashi proves his pshat that the melachs daimis is the finer salt from the famous Gemara that says regarding the concept of mayim achreinim, that the reason for mayim achreinim is because after you eat a suda and your hands came in contact with the food and the salt in the food, so could be a residue from the melachs daimis left in your fingers, that if you put it then into your eyes, it could be a danger for your eyes. So you see that this is something that's very fine and it can be left on your fingers. If it would be coarse salt, how would it be left on your fingers? That's Rashi's pshat. Rabbeinu Chananel, however, does teach the Gemara in the reverse, that melachs daimis is the more coarse salt and melachs streiknis is the more finer salt. But the Gemara now has another question. Vatanya, we learned in a Beitza, Rabbi Yehuda says, mayim u melach betelim beisa. Both water and salt would be bottled if you took those ingredients and you mixed it into a dough. You don't have to take into account that person's tchum. But if you mixed it into a pot of food, over here it does not become bottled because of the soup in this food that you're cooking here. So the water is there in the soup and it's noticeable separately. It doesn't get mixed into the ingredients like a dough where the water is not noticeable at all. So the question is, over here we see Rabbi Yehuda only argues regarding dough and not regarding a pot of food. But with a pot of food he agrees to the Tanakama that you do have to take into account the tchum of the owner of the water. But from our Mishnah it's mashma that Rabbi Yehuda argued both regarding a pot of food, just like he argues regarding dough, the same thing. Rashi brings over here because the Mishnah brought up also spices. So the Mishnah was talking about a pot of food that you add spices to. You don't usually add spices to dough. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, when he was arguing on the Tanakama, he was arguing both the water that was added regarding dough and water that was added for a pot of food. But over here in the Beitza we see that regarding a pot of food, Rabbi Yehuda does not argue, because over here the water is floating in the soup and it's noticeable. So the Gemara answers, like kashya, this is not a question. Ha ba'ava. In our Mishnah, it's speaking about food that's thicker, and the water that's being used for the ingredients is absorbed in this food, and it's not swimming around, it's not noticeable separately. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda argues with the Tanakama that you do not have to follow the tchum of the owner of that water. And ha baraka. And here in the Beitza, it's speaking about food cooking in a pot that's softer, or that there is soup over there, and therefore the water is noticeable separately. So you do have to follow the tchum of that person, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Continuing with the halachis of the tchum on Yontif. Sagt Heilige Mishnah, hagacheles keragle abaylim. A coal, a fire, that you want to transport from one place to another on Yontif, so you follow the tchum of the owner of this coal. Vishal heves, however, if it's a fire if you have a flame fire and someone goes and lights a candle from someone else's flame, b'chol mokin, it doesn't follow the tchum of the owner of that flame. Whoever wants to take from it and take it to wherever he's going to go, to his tchum, can take from it and go to wherever he wants. And the reason is because a shalheves is something that's not tangible. If it's a tangible object that's owned by somebody, so then the tchum of that object is established according to the owner of that object. But a shalheves, which is not tangible, so the owner does not prevent, his tchum does not prevent it of being taken by someone else and take it to wherever he wants. Now, the Mishnah brings similar halachas based on the same concept that the kacheles is a tangible object and the shalheves, the flame, is not a tangible object. So there's certain other halachas that apply. Kacheles shel hektish, a coal that's owned by hektish, moyelim ba. So if you have any benefit of it, so you'll be moyel min atayre, you misused hektish. And the shalheves, however, if it's only a flame of hektish, that you took a flame from the hektish to use to light a candle, for example, from a flame of hektish, so then, because it's not something tangible, loy nanin, midrabanon, you're still not allowed to have this hana, but v'loy mayelin, min atayre, there is no meila of this flame, which is not tangible. A third halacha, hamaitzi gacheles l'rishus harabim, if one carries out on Shabbos a coal into the rishus harabim, which is a tangible object, chayev, you're chayev for carrying, for taking out from the rishus hayachid to the rishus harabim. V'shalheves, however, if you carry it out just the flame from the rishus hayachid and the rishus harabim, and the Gemara will explain how that is possible, what the person did, so then because the flame is not a tangible object, potter, he'll be potter. So the Gemara now brings a Beitza, which brings these halachas of the Mishnah and adds more as well, to distinguish between a coal and the flame of fire. Tana Rabbanon and a Beitza we learned chamisha dvarim. There were 5 halachas nemru that was said begacheles regarding a coal of fire. Hagacheles keraglei abaylim. The coal, the tchum will be like the owner of it. V'shalheves b'chol mokim. But the flame, which is not tangible, anybody that takes the flame can take it to wherever he wants to go in his tchum. Gacheles shel hektish. A gacheles that belongs to hektish, moyelim ba, there's mi'ila on this minatayre, but v'shalheves, loy nanin, midrabanan, you're not allowed to have anah from this flame belonging to hektish, but v'loy moyelim, you're not, there's no mi'ila. Another halacha, a third halacha, which was not mentioned in the Mishnah, gacheles shel avodah zarah asura, a coal belonging to avodah zarah, you're not allowed to have any benefit of it, as it's asur by all objects of avodah zarah. There's a pasuk, minatayre, you're not allowed to have any hana of anything belonging to avodah zarah. But a flame of fire, which is not something tangible, muteres, you're allowed to have hana from this, from avodah zarah. Hamaitzi gacheles l'rishus harabim, carrying out the coal to the rishus harabim, chayiv, you'll be chayiv. V'shalheves, which is not tangible, potter. 5th halacha, hamudar hana mechaveiroi, if you have a neder that you made, not to derive any benefit from your friend, osir begachaltoi, you're not allowed to have any hana from a coal that belongs to him, which is a tangible object that he owns. But umuter b'shalheftoi, you are allowed to have hana of a flame fire, to take a flame from his candle, because that's not something tangible that you're taking from him. So now the Gemara focuses on one point there where there's a distinction between hektish and avodah zarah. My shno, what's the difference? Shalheves avodah zarah desharia. When it comes to the flame of avodah zarah, it's completely mutter to have a no from it. Not only minatayr, but even midrabanan, they did not institute any takana to take from a flame of avodah zarah. Or Maishna the hektish, and why when it comes to hektish, da asira, that over there, even though minatayra, there is no meila because it's not something tangible, but the Rabbanon did institute an iser to take from a flame of hektish. If they were afraid that a person would come to misuse hektish, so why wouldn't they institute a similar takana regarding avodah zarah, not to come to have anah from avodah zarah? So the Gemara answers, avodah zarah de meisa. Avodah zarah, which is disgusting in people's eyes, ubedili in shemina, and people separate from avodah zarah, legozru barabana. So there, the Rabbanan did not feel it required to make any additional gzeira. Hektish, the loimos, but hektish, which is not something despicable in people's eyes, v'loi bedili in shemine, and people do not separate from hektish, gozru bei Rabbanan. So here, the Rabbanan did decree that you should not even take a flame from the hektish, even though it's not something tangible. So both Rashi and Tosfos clarify that the pshat in the Gemara is not the way it sounds from the words, that when it comes to hektish, people don't separate from hektish at all. People know something that's hektish, that they're not allowed to have anah from it, so people do separate and make sure that they should not have anah from hektish. And Tosfos here brings a clear Gemara in Psachim regarding chametz, that if you find chametz of hektish from hektish on Yontif, you don't have to cover it because people naturally stay away from hektish. Elamai, in this context, in contrast to Avodah Zarah, what the Gemara is saying is, by Avodah Zarah, people stay away from Avodah Zarah much more than hektish. So even though people stay away from both of them, but from Avodah Zarah, which is mas, which is repugnant in people's eyes, they stay away much more, and therefore Chacham did not make any gzeira there. Whereas by hektish, although people stay away, but not as much, so therefore they made a gzeira not to have anah from a flame of fire of hektish. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, Hamaitzi gacheles l'rishus harabim chayiv v'shalheves potter. A person that carries out a coal into the Rishus Harabim on Shabbos is chayiv for carrying it to the Rishus Harabim, but the flame, if you just took a flame out, will be potter. Frag the Gemara, but Vatanya, we learned in Abraisa, Hamaitzi shalheves kolshu. If you carry out just a small tiny flame, chayiv, you are chayiv for carrying out a flame. So that contradicts what it says in our Mishnah. Amar Rav Sheishes, so Rav Sheishes answers, Kagoin sheitziyoi bekisim. In that Beitza, he didn't just take out the flame alone, he took out a flame with a chip of wood, or let's say with a match. So therefore, he's chayiv because he is holding on to the match, taking it out. Okay, but in our Mishnah, it's not even with a match. Now, how exactly he did take it out, the Gemara at the end will explain. So the Gemara says, wait, if in the Beitza he took it out with a kisim, with a chip of wood, so v'tepik le mishum kisim. So why does the Beitza say that he's chayiv for the flame that he took out? He should be chayiv for the chip of wood that he took out. And for the Gemara, b'deles le shiur. For that chip of wood alone, he would not be chayiv because it does not have the minimum amount to be chayiv for it. There's a minimum amount for everything that you carry out on Shabbos that it should be at least significant enough to be used for something to be chayiv. And the Gemara here brings what the shiur is for a chip of wood. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Hamaitzi eitzim kedei, if a person carries out wood, what's the minimum amount of wood to be chayiv? Kedei levashal beitza kala. The amount you need in order to cook a egg that is cooked easily, which is a chicken egg. So therefore, this kisim we're speaking about over here was too small of a size. It can't cook this kind of an egg. And therefore he's only chayiv because the kisim, the chip of wood, also has a flame on it. And that's what the Beitza was speaking about. Abaye explains the case of the Beitza a bit differently. Kogain the shaife lemana. The case over here is that the person went and took a piece of keli, he took a piece of earthenware, and he smeared it with oil. Shaife lemana mishcha, he smeared this earthenware with oil. And he lit it on fire, and this fire is burning on this oil, and that's how he carried it out. Similar answer to Rav Sheishes, but Rashi says that according to one pshat, that Abaye disagrees with Rav Sheish's pshat because a kisim is something that does not hold on fire a very long time. It's like a match; it burns out very quickly, and therefore he says that in such a case, it's like you're just taking out a flame of fire itself that you would not be chayiv for it. So therefore, he argues in him. Rashi has a second pshat as well, but that's one of the pshatim of Rashi. So now the Gemara here asks basically the same question that I asked before on Rav Sheish's pshat, that asks now on Abaye's pshat. Tepikle mishumana. If you're saying that he didn't in the Beitza, he didn't just take out the flame of fire, but he took it out burning on this oily keli, so then why shouldn't he be chayiv just for the keli that he took out? Why are you saying that he's chayiv for the flame that he took out? So the Gemara answers b'chaspa. It's a broken earthenware and therefore has no use for nothing, so you're not chayiv for that. Fragt the Gemara, why not? V'tepik le mishum chaspa. Let him be chayiv for this broken earthenware that could be used for something, and let him be chayiv for that. And for the Gemara, b'deles le shiur. It's a small broken earthenware that does not have the minimum amount required to be chayiv if you take it out. And the Gemara brings the shiur, the Tanan. We learned cheres, a piece of earthenware. What's the shiur to be chayiv when you carry it out? Kedelitem bein patzim lechaveiroi divrei Rabbi Yehuda. A broken piece of earthenware that's used when you have boards that you're building and the boards are not evenly matched up, and you have to put a piece of earthenware to position it well. So that's the piece of earthenware that's large enough to be chayiv when you carry out. So over here we're speaking about a piece of earthenware that's smaller than that, and therefore the person's going to be patur mitzad the earthenware, but he's chayiv for the shalheves that he took out with it. That was the pshat in the Beitza. But now going back to the Mishnah, Elo hodetnan amoitzi shalheves patur. So now when it says in the Mishnah that if you carry out a flame, you're going to be patur, how is it possible to carry out a flame? So we're not talking about a flame that's holding on to a chip of wood or a broken piece of earthenware or anything, just the flame itself. Otherwise you would be chayiv, as the Beitza says. So what is the case? How is the person taking out just the flame itself? And for the Gemara, kagoin the adye aduye l'rishus harabim. You blew this flame that was in a Rishus HaYachid into the Rishus HaRabim. Let's say a person had this flame of fire in the Rishus HaYachid very close to the Rishus HaRabim, and he was fanning the flames of the fire, and he blows the fire, and he blows a flame that goes into the Rishus HaRabim and drops into the Rishus HaRabim. So it's just the flame itself. So in such a case, he's going to be patur because the flame itself is not a tangible object. That's the case of our Mishnah. Continuing with halachas of Eruv Techumin regarding Yontiv, Zaktei Legemishne, Boyer Shal Yachid, a pit of water that is owned by a private individual. So Keraglei HaYachid, this water may be taken according to the Tchum of this private individual. V'shal Anshe Ha'ir, if it's a water, in a pit of water that's owned by the people of the city, Keraglei Anshe Ha'ir, so then you could take this water to the Tchum of the people of this city. V'shal oile bavel, a pit of water that was dug for the public, for the people that are being oile regel from Golus, from Bavel, coming to Eretz Yisrael. So this is not owned by anybody, not by an individual, not by the people of the city. It's hefker for everybody. So over here, keragle hamemale. The tchum will go according to the one that fills the water. When you fill the water for yourself, so then you're kained from hefker, and therefore, at that point, it establishes the tchum according to the person that fills it for himself, that he could take it to his own tchum. So Rashi here clarifies 2 points. First of all, Rashi says, we had before in the Gemara Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri that said that even an object of hefker, in the place where it is, when Yontif came in, it establishes the tchum for where it is, as if this hefker item was owned by somebody at that point. So obviously, our Mishnah disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and as the Gemara says in Eruvin, that the Chachamim disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Besides that, over here when it says keragle amemale, why are we saying keragle amemale? Why shouldn't we say that it's keragle kol adam? It's hefker, it's not owned by anybody. So it should be keragle kol adam, that any person can take it. If you filled it up and then you want to give it to your friend and he can take it from you, and whoever wants to take it can take it to wherever he wants. Why does it go dafka according to the person that filled it? That once he filled it, now it's his tchum. So Rashi explains, because our Mishnah holds yesh bereire, that once he fills it up, we say that retroactively this clarifies that when Yontif came in, this water was designated for this person. So now that he filled it, from the beginning of Yontif, this was as if this was his water, and therefore it goes according to the Mamale, and if he wants to give the water to someone else afterwards, the Tchum will always remain with this person that filled it up. Sagt die Gemara, Ramile, Ravel Rav Nachman. Rav asked the question to Rav Nachman. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah here, Boyer Shal Yachid Keragle Yachid. The water of a pit that belongs to an individual goes according to the tchum of this individual. Veraminu, I'll ask you a contradiction from a Beitza where it says differently. Nahareis HaMoishchen. If you have streams of water that are flowing, or Mayanis HaNoivim, springs of water that are flowing. Harehein keragle kol adam. If you fill the water from there, so anybody that has this water can take it to his tchum that he wants. It doesn't go according to the individual owner of this, but whoever gets it can take it. There is no specific tchum that's established by an owner. Whoever gets the water can take it to his tchum where he wants to go. So it's different than what it said in the Mishnah, that the tchum goes according to the owner of the yachid. So the Gemara answers, Omar Rave, or others are good as Omar Rabbe, Hocha b'maya skinon. The case of our Mishnah is speaking about b'mechunasin, water that's collected in a pit and remains in one area and it's not flowing. Over here, in this case, water that's stationary in one area and there's an owner for it, it establishes the tchum in that area. But water that's flowing and is not stationary in one area could never establish a tchum, even if there's an owner of it. But because this water is not flowing, is not stationary, it's flowing, so it does not establish a tchum. And whoever takes this water could take the water wherever he's going to. Itmenami Amir Abchia Bar Oven Amar Shmuel b'Muchunasen. Our Mishnah that said that it goes according to Raglei HaYachid is specifically speaking about the water that's collected and stationary in one place. Sagt the Gemara, it said in the Mishnah, Vishal Oile Bavel Keragle Hamemale, that when you have this pit of water that was made for the people that are Oile Regel from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, so the one that fills the water, according to him, we established the Tchum. Sagt the Gemara, here is a following machlekes, and this will come into a big discussion. And again, once again, over here towards the end of Masechta Beya, we're going to be treated to a little bit of a deeper sugya, relative to the rest of the Masechta, that was more easier in Yonim. We have over here towards the end of the Masechta, you have to dive a little bit deeper into the sugya here. So Itma, we learned the following machlekes. Mila Mayim, a person that fills water from this water from the Oile Bavel that is made for the public, and V'nasan l'chaveirei, and he filled this water and gave it to his friend. So as Rashi explains, the case here specifically is that he didn't fill the water for himself. He filled the water l'chatchila with the intention for his friend. He did not want to acquire it for himself. He filled the water only for the friend to acquire this water. So now the question is, according to whose tchum do we establish this water? According to the one that's filling it, because he's the one that filled the water? Or do I say, no, but he did not intend to fill it for himself. He wasn't even interested in acquiring it for himself. He was interested in, he's just doing a shlichus for his friend to acquire it for his friend. So his friend is the one that acquired this water. So the tchum should be according to your friend. So this is a machlokes. Rav Nachman says, Keragle mi shenesmaluloi, that the tchum is established for this water, like the person that the water was filled for him. Because you did a shlichus for him, you filled the water for him, and you never acquired it for yourself. You didn't intend to acquire it for yourself. So it's his tchum. Rav Sheshes says, Keragle amemale, that the tchum is established according to the person that filled the water, even though he did not want to acquire it for himself, but still the water, the tchum that is established like the person himself that filled it. So the Gemara explains, what's the basis of their machlokes? So basically, we see here that there's a machlokes regarding this shlichus, whether the shlichus worked or the shlichus did not work. When you're filling it for your friend, will this be a shlichus for him, and therefore it's going to be according to the person that you filled it for him? Or no, the shlichus did not work, and therefore it goes according to the person that filled it. So that's what's going on over here. So now, what's the basis of this machlokes? Mar sovar beire def geiruhu. So, according to Rav Nachman, or rather according to Rav Sheshes, that is, this pit of water that the Oile Bavel made for the people going to Eretz Yisrael, this public boir of water, is hefker. It belongs to everybody. So now, what's the story? So what happens if it's hefker? So Rashi here brings the Gemara and Baba Metzia. What we're talking about over here is, your friend never appointed you to be a shliach b'chlal. You're coming and filling it up for your friend. You're not doing it for yourself. You want your friend to acquire this. But he never appointed you to do this. You want to go ahead and do this for him. How could you be a shliach for him without him appointing you to be a shliach? So there's a concept called zachin la'adam shalei b'fanav. I can be someone's shliach and do something that's a benefit for him without him ever appointing me, because it's a benefit for him. So that's allowed. But here's the thing though, in a case where you are acquiring something for someone, but at the same time that it's a schus for your friend, it's also a loss for others, you don't have a right to acquire, to create a kinyan for your friend, if at the same time it's a loss for others. This is what's called chav la'acherim. If you're taking something that for one person it's a benefit and for others it's a loss, and you weren't appointed as a shliach to do this, so then you can't go ahead and create this kinyan. This is according to Rashi's Shitta. I'm explaining the Gemara here. This is how Rashi explains it in Baba Metzia, and Rashi brings over here part of this inyan. So the point is that over here, you wanted to acquire this water from Hefker for your friend, and not for yourself. So according to Rav Sheshis, that doesn't work. Your friend is not going to acquire the water, because while what you're doing is a benefit for your friend, you're taking away this object of hefker from others to be able to use this water. And therefore, to be zeicha, to create a kinyan for your friend, when it's also going to be a loss that others will not be able to benefit from this, the kinyan does not take effect. The same applies also, as Rashi brings over here, hamagbiya metzia lachaveira. If there's a lost object, it's hefker, and you want to pick it up, not for yourself, but only for your friend. And while for your friend that's a benefit, for others it's a loss. Now they can't get this metzia. So you don't have the right to create that kinyan for your friend, also causing a loss of being able to attain this metzia by others. So therefore over here, since this bair is hefker, and others would have been able to get it, and therefore you're taking away now that's chus from them, so therefore you can't be kainet for your friend. So therefore the tchum does not go according to your friend, it goes according to the person that filled it up himself. That's Rav Sheshis' opinion. Mar Savar, however, Rav Nachman holds, Beide the shutfahu. This bayr of water that the people dug for everybody that was oile regel is not hefker. It's owned, it's share, everyone shares ownership in this bayr. So therefore, when I'm picking it up, when I'm drawing the water from my friend and I want to be kinded from my friend, I'm just giving him his share of water that everybody really owns over here. So I don't need to be his shliach to be kind for him and take away from others. I'm drawing the water which is his share. So therefore, since my intention was to draw it for him and not for myself, so he's kind of his share of the water, and therefore the tchum goes according to him, according to the person that you filled it up for him. That's Rav Nachman's opinion. This is the basis of the machlokes. In other words, the way the Gemara understands now is, everybody agrees to this concept that you can't be chav la'achedim. You can't be zeicha something from hefker in a case that you're chav la'achedim, if it's hefker. Here though, the argument is, what is the status of these baitis that they dug for the people that were oile regel? Is it hefker, and therefore you can't be zeicha for your friend? Or is it shutfis? The other person has a share in it, so therefore you can be zeicha for him. So the Gemara asks on this explanation of the machlokes. Fragt the Gemara, Eisver Rav Rav Nachman. So Rav asked Rav Nachman. So here it says the following halacha. Na Beitza. Hareini alecho chedem. If I come and say to another person that I should be to you chedem, in other words, my possessions, everything that I own should be chedem, should be like hektish to you. You shouldn't be able to have a nar from me. So hamuder asa. So that person that you made a neder for him, against him, that he shouldn't be able to have a nar from you is asa. You can't have any anar from your possessions. In the reverse, if you say harei ata alai chedem, if you say to your friend, your possessions should be like hektish to me, so then hanaider asa. So then you that made that neder, not to have any benefit from your friend's possessions, will be asa to have anar from his possessions. I mean, although his possessions are not yours to aser, but if you make a neder not to have anar from his possessions, so then as Rashi here brings, the Torah says la yachal devara, you can't break your word, the neder that you made not to have anar from your friend's items. Okay, then the Beitza continues. How about if the person said both? Hareini alecha va'ata alai. My possessions should be forbidden for you to have anar from, and your possessions should be forbidden for me to have anar from. So then shneim asurim zeh b'zeh. So both of these individuals are now prohibited of having anar one from the other. Umutarin b'shel oile bavel. However, they will be permitted to have anar from those things that the people of Golus made for people coming up to be oile regel. Why? Because those things that were made for the people that were oile regel are hefker. It was designated for everybody. It belongs to the public. It's really hefker. But v'asurin b'shel oisa ha'ir. But they will be prohibited of using anything from the same city that they live in, because that's something that's not hefker. That's something that's a partnership that's shared by all the people of the city. So since they're not allowed to have anar from one another, they can't have anar of anything that is a partnership there. So now, the Gemara, the Beitza that is over there, clarifies exactly when it said that the things from Oile Bavel are allowed. What does this refer to? Ve'elehein dvarim shel Oile Bavel. Here are the items of Oile Bavel that are public property, they're hefker, and they're both allowed to have anar from it. Harabayis, the harabayis that people come to, so that belongs to everybody, it's hefker. Halishkais, the chambers in the Beis HaMikdash also belongs to everybody. It was built for all the Klal Yisrael, and it's hefker. and also the courtyard in the Beis HaMikdash, the Azara is also hefker. They can both walk into it. And ubayr shalem tzad, and also the pit of water that they dug in the middle of the way, that's also hefker, and it belongs to everybody, or to nobody, that is. It's hefker, and they can both have anah from it. And ve'elu hein shal oisa ha'ir, and here are the examples of things that we speak about in the same city that there's a partnership that they cannot have anah from. Harachayv, the street in the city, or the gears of the Bach is harachba, a certain open area that people come to over there, or Beis HaKnesses, the shul, or Beis HaMerchatz, a bathhouse. These are shared areas that they both can't have anah from. So one of the things that it mentioned by Oile Bavel is what we were speaking about, the pit of water that was made on the way. And what did it say? That's considered to be something that they both could have anah from. Now, if you're going to say like the pshat we said before, according to Rav Nachman, that beire the shutfihu, that this pit of water from the people that are oile regel is shutfis, it belongs to both of them together. Amai mutter. Why does it say that they're both allowed to have anah from this? Vatnan, didn't we learn in a Mishnah that says hashutfin shenodru hana zemizeh, shutfin that made a neder not to have anah one from another. Asurim likanes lechatzer. They can't go into the chatzah that they own together because they can't have anah from one another. And lirchaitz bibar, and they also can't wash in a bar that they own together because they can't have anah from one another. So we see that a bar of water that's owned in partnership, they can't have anah from one another. So over here as well, if this bar is owned in partnership by all the people that are being oile regel, so then how could it say here in the Beitza that these people that can't have anah from one another could go ahead and use this bar? So the Gemara answers, Lirchaitz hachanami. If the question would be about them going and bathing inside this bar, you're right, because they have a neder not to have a nor from one another, and they're going into the bar itself, bathing in the water, they're having a nor from the other person's water, it wouldn't be allowed. But what are we speaking about over here? Lamalois. Here we're only speaking about filling water, drawing water from it. And therefore drawing water, when you're not entering into the entire pit of water, is a different thing. Mar mididei kamamala. This person is filling up from his water in this pit, from his share of water in this pit. Umar mididei kamamala. And the other person is filling up the water from his share of water in the pit. In other words, what's the Gemara really saying here? That we say, yesh breida, that even though there is a partnership and the water is all mixed together, but once they come and they draw the water, so now I say that this retroactively clarifies that this water that was mixed into this pit was always really my share of the water. So I'm not having anah from my friend. And the same thing, the other person takes his share of water. So therefore, there's no problem with the fact that Rav Nachman holds that this water from the pit, from the Oile Bavel, is considered to be shutfis, but yet at the same time, the people that make a neder from one another could have anah from it because we rely on the svara of yesh bereida, that they're only drawing water, they're not bathing inside the entire pit of water, and when each one draws, he's drawing his water. Now it clarifies that this was always his water. So now the whole basis of the answer of the Gemara is that Rav Nachman holds of Breida. So the Gemara here is going to ask on this, and the Gemara is going to prove that Rav Nachman does not hold of the concept of Breida. V'sava Rav Nachman yesh Breida. Does Rav Nachman hold that we rely on this concept of Breida, that retroactively you can clarify that each partner is taking his share of water? But Vatnan, we learned in the Mishnah. And here, based on what Rav Nachman says on this Mishnah, we see that Rav Nachman does not hold of the concept of Breida. But now, in order to understand this Mishnah, it's a Mishnah in Shkolim, you have to have a few introductions, as Rashi here brings the introductions to understand what this Mishnah is saying. The Mishnah is going to bring up the halacha of Machtas HaShekel, and also the halacha of Meiser Behema. So by Machtas HaShekel that you have to give once a year for the Karbanis, Tzibur and the Beis HaMikdash, there is a takana midrabanan that besides the Machtas HaShekel that you give, you should also add a kalbain. You should add a small coin to this Machtas HaShekel. And the reason is because when the Hektish gets this Machtas HaShekel, they don't keep the Machtas HaShekel, which are very small coins and could easily get lost. They exchange it to larger coins, and it costs the Hektish a little bit to exchange the money. So in order that Hektish shouldn't have any loss, you add another little coin to the Machtas HaShekel that you give. Now, this halacha of adding the kalbain to Machtas HaShekel, applies when a person is giving a machzas shekel. But even if you're giving a full shekel as a partnership with you and your friend, nevertheless, the Takanas Chachamim still applies that you have to give the kalbain to the machzas shekel. They always apply this halacha of giving the kalbain, even if you're giving a partnership, one large coin. When does this halacha, there's an exception of this kalbain, when you don't have to give this kalbain. A father that's giving machzas shekel for his family, for his children, so then he does not have to add the kalbain. If he's giving a whole shekel or a few shkolim for his entire family, so then the din of kalbain was not applied. That's the halacha regarding machzas shekel, which this Beitza will speak about. Now, ma'aser behema. By ma'aser behema, there's sort of an opposite halacha. The Gemara in Beitza, as Rashi here brings the pasuk, learns out ashiyah lecha, that there is no ma'aser behema when the flock of animals is owned by partners. If it's one person that owns them, lecha, so then he has to give ma'aser behema. If it's owned by partners, there is no ma'aser behema. However, when we say that it's partnership, there's no ma'aser behema, that's only partners. How about if you have a father that passed away, and there's a bunch of brothers that are inheriting this estate, and it has a flock of animals in it? So, are they considered to be partners? No. Over here, they are going to be chayiv in ma'aser behema. But here, what this Beitza is going to be discussing is, when we're talking about children that are inheriting their father's estate, there are two stages in this. There's initially when the father passes away, and now you have this shared estate by all the brothers. That's the first stage. But then afterwards, they eventually divide the estate, and each one gets their part. And now, after they have divided the estate, what happens if two brothers decide and say, you know what, we want to repartner together, and they have this flock of animals that they want to repartner together. So they already divided, and now they're partnering back together. So that's already a completely different stage. In the beginning, when the father passed away, they were also sort of all partners. But there, they were partners before anything was divided. That's what's called in the lashon of the Gemara there, tfusas habayis. This is just the estate of the house of the father after he passed away. But then, after it's divided, and now they repartnered again, two or three or whatever amount of brothers decided to partner again, that's not called tfusas habayis anymore. Now they repartnered again, they're just like regular partners. So over here, the halacha regarding the kalbain of machzas shekel and the halacha regarding the ma'aser behema is always going to be the opposite of one another. When it comes to the kalbain, by partners you are chayiv in a kalbain, and by the ma'aser behema you pater. When it comes to tfusas habayis, when it comes over here to the children that have the estate of the father, here the halacha is the opposite. By the kalbain, so you are going to be pater from a kalbain, because, as I mentioned, the father that has children, and there's all children that are sharing with the father this machzas shekel that they're giving is pater from the kalbain. Whereas if it's partners, so then you're going to be chayiv in the kalbain, but pater from the machzas shekel. Now let's see it in the words of the Gemara inside. So Vatnan, we said in the Mishnah as follows: Ha'achin ha'shutvin. When you have brothers that are partners, if the nature of their partnership is such that they're going to be obligated to give a kalbain. So when is that? When are they going to be obligated to give that kalbain? So as I explained, this would only be at the stage 2. Not if they were partners right after the father passed away and they're all partners in their father's estate. Because then it's like the father giving the machzas shekel for the children. It's all one estate and there's no kalbain then. So if they're chayiv in the kalbain, we're talking about stage 2, when they divided and then brothers decided to partner again and they're giving the machzas shekel in partnership. So then they're going to be chayiv to give a kalbain because they're partners, and partners are chayiv in a kalbain. But peturin mi ma'aser behema. But since they're regular partners now, so for ma'aser behema, partnership is pater of ma'aser behema. But in the reverse, if it's in the stage 1, when it's still in the father's estate, and therefore they're going to be chayiv and ma'aser behema, because it's still a shared estate from the father, and they're not real partners of separate people that are partnering together. It's tfusas habayis. It's all the one estate from the father, and therefore they are chayiv and ma'aser behema. So then, peturim min hakalbain. So then they're going to be pater from giving this kalbain because it's one estate from the father. And when a father gives machzas shekel for all the children, you pater from the kalbain. That's the Mishnah. And now here is going to come in a machlokes regarding this, whether yesh breide or ein breide. And we'll see that Rav Nachman holds ein breide. And Ravanan came and explained, when we speak over here in this Mishnah about the brothers that divided the estate of the father, and then they repartnered, in what way did they divide? Rav Anan says it will depend how they divided this estate, whether we will then consider them later in stage 2 to be considered regular partners. So Rav Anan says as follows: Lo shanu. When do I say that if they repartnered again later that they're considered to be like regular partners? Elo, that's only shacholku gedoyim keneged tloyim. The way they divided the estate was, they said, look, we're going to look at the value of the estate of our father. We're not going to divide that everyone's going to get a part in everything. They're all equal inheritors of everything that the father owned, right? So naturally, what would you do? Everybody gets a little bit of everything, his part, his share and everything. But they didn't do it that way. They divided by its value. And therefore, what they did is, shacholku gedoyim keneged tloyim. They said, you'll take the goats, and I'll take the sheep. And tloyim keneged gedoyim. And they evaluated the value of the sheep against the goats. So basically, they did not divide the way you naturally divide an estate of a father, where everyone actually takes his share of the estate. Rather, they evaluated the entire estate, and now they sort of created the way partners would split up. Let's evaluate this against this, and you'll take this part, and I'll take that part. That's the way they divided. So in such a case, I say that they fully separated from one another, and now if they repartner later again, this is a new partnership. This is a new partnership, and therefore the halacha of this Mishnah will apply that it's considered to be a new partnership. But avol, however, cholku gedayim keneged gedayim. If the way they divided this estate was the way you naturally divide an estate of inheritors, that each one takes his share in each part. In the Gedayim itself, in the goats, each one took his part of the goats. Utloyim keneged tloyim, and when it came to the sheep, they took all the flock of sheep and they divided the sheep, and each one got his part. So then, says Rav Anan, Oimrim, what I say is, they're not going to be partners. There is no stage 2 that they turn into partners here. Zeu chelkoi hamagiyoi mishar shayna lekach. So really, what happened over here is they never really split up like regular partners that split up from one another. Each one got his part from, and his share from what the estate really came to him from the beginning. In other words, what Rav Anan is saying is yesh breida, that this retroactively clarifies from the beginning that when the father passed away, this was my share. Now that you're giving me my share, this is not a new ownership that I'm receiving now, separated from my brother, that this is a new ownership that I bought now, and my brother bought the other part of ownership for him. No, this retroactively clarifies that this is really the share that I inherited from the beginning. So therefore, in such a case, Rav Anan says, this is not considered to be that there's not going to be a new partnership over here between them. And therefore, over here, this really clarifies that they are really receiving their share that was theirs from the beginning. So again, the point of what Rav Anan is saying is all based on the concept of yesh breida, that this retroactively clarifies that this was theirs from the beginning. But again, this is all if they're dividing in the way you would naturally divide an estate, where each one takes their share in every single part of what there is. Whereas if they're dividing goats against sheep and so on, so then they're splitting up, not in the way you split up an inheritance, but the way partners divide. So therefore over here you can't say that it retroactively clarifies, because they're dividing in a different kind of a way. Now Rav Nachman doesn't hold of Breide, but Rav Nachman says, Afile cholku gedayim keneged gedayim, etloyim keneged tloyim, even if they divided the goats, and the goats, each one got their share of the goats, and each one got their share of the sheep. Ein oimrim, we do not say, Zehu chelkei hamagiyoi mishar shayna lekach. We do not say that each brother is getting, it retroactively clarifies that this is his portion that he got from the beginning. Because there is no breida. Now that he got this portion, so right now, this is a new portion that he got. In the beginning, it was all shared, there was tfusas abayis all together. But now later, when you divide it, each one is getting their portion right now. It's a new ownership that you're getting now. It does not retroactively clarify that this was yours from the beginning. So what do we see from here? Rav Nachman holds ein breira. So how can we answer our question before regarding this bayer that the Oile Bavel dug and say that Rav Nachman holds that there is a shutvis in this bayer, and the reason why they could have both could have anah from it is only when they draw water from it, because I rely on the concept of breira, that each one is drawing his share of water. It's retroactively clarified that it's only his share of water. Rav Nachman does not hold of breira, as we see over here. So because of this, the Gemara comes to a different explanation to the machlokes of Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes. So again, the machlokes of Rav Nachman and Rav Sheshes was when you fill water from this bayer, from the Oile Bavel, not for yourself, but you're only having in mind that your friend should acquire this water. So according to who does the tchum go? Rav Nachman says that the tchum goes according to the person that you filled it for him. And Rav Sheshes says that tchum goes according to the person himself that filled it. So the Gemara now is going to give a new explanation for this. Ella, so rather, hocha b'magbia, or I skipped just one line. Ella de kula alme beire de hefkeruhu. So we have to say that everybody agrees that this bar from the Oile Bavel, in fact, is hefker, and that's why over there, when there's a neder that they can't have anah from one another, they are allowed to have anah from this bar because it's hefker. We're not relying on the concept of breira. So what's the machlokes over here? And v'hacha, as the Bach here says, v'hacha b'magbia mitzia lachaveiroi komiflagi. But here they're actually arguing about this very halacha of hamagbia mitzia lachaveiroi, which is when you have a hefker object, a mitzia object, and I want to go ahead and pick it up for my friend. So at the same time that it's a benefit for my friend, it's causing a loss for others. Do I have a right to create that kinyan for my friend, even though I'm causing a loss to others? So that's what they're arguing about. So I'm going to first read the simple pshat of the Gemara, and then I'll say what Rashi and Tosfos say over here about this Gemara. But first, the simple pshat of the Gemara is as follows: that Mar Savar. So one opinion over here is Kana, that when you pick up a mitzvah for your friend, so you have the right to pick it up for your friend, and we're not concerned about the fact that it causes a loss to another. The fact that it's chav la'acherin does not matter. I have the right to pick up a mitzvah for my friend, and it's kind of for him. So in other words, this very halacha that we brought in the beginning from the Gemara and Baba Mitzvah, that as long as it's chav la'acherim, you can't create a kinyan for your friend, this itself is the dispute over here. One opinion is that Amagbia, which is according to the simple pshat of the Gemara, would be Rav Nachman, that Amagbia mitzvah la'chaveiroi, kana chaveiroi. Yes, it was kind of for him. It doesn't matter that it causes a loss to someone else. So since my friend was kaina, so the tchum will go according to him. He was kaina. And Mar Sava, however, Rav Sheshes hold, like we said in the beginning, that loikana, if I picked it up for my friend, so because it's chav la'cherim, it's causing a loss to others, so therefore I can't create this kinyan for my friend, and therefore he's not going to be kainit. So the one that fills the water here, his friend was not kainit, so the tchum goes according to the person that filled it, not according to his friend. That's the pshat in Rav Sheshes. That would seem to be the simple pshat of the Gemara. Rashi, however, has a different pshat in this Gemara, and the reason is because Rashi points out that in the Gemara in Baba Metzia, it clearly says that Rav Chisda and Rav Nachman both hold Hamagbia Metzia lachaveiroi loikana chaveiroi, that you do not have the right to create a kinyan for your friend if it causes a loss to someone else. So how are we saying here that you can? So therefore, Rashi learns the Gemara over here as follows. Everybody holds that when you pick up a mitzvah and you're not intending to acquire it for yourself, just for your friend will not be kainit. Here, however, what the Gemara is addressing is, how about the person himself that picked it up? Will he be kainit for himself in this case? Here's the problem. He did not have kavanah to be kainit for himself. He had kavanah to be kainit for his friend, but not for himself. So a basic requirement by all kinyanim is you have to have kavanah for kinyan, for the kinyan to take effect. If you do not have kavanah to be kainah for yourself, maybe you yourself should not be kainah. That is the machlokes here. So here, let's read the Gemara again. Mar savar kana. So what Rav Nachman holds is that, rather, again, let me do that again. Mar Sava goes on Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes holds kana, that you are kainah for yourself. Even though your friend is not kainah, I can't be kainah for my friend because I'm causing a loss to others, but I am kainah for myself. Even though I did not have kavanah to be kainah for myself, but the general kavanah to be kainah I had, so I can be kainah for myself. And therefore, if I was kainah for myself, So the status of the tchum of the water will go according to you. And Mar Sava, Rav Nachman holds loy kana, which means not only was your friend not kind if you picked up for him, you're not kind it either. Nobody is kind of this. Your friend is not kind because you were causing a loss to someone else and he can't be kind of this. You're not kind because you never intended to be kind for yourself. You had no kavanah to be kind for yourself. No kinyan can take effect without kavanah. So therefore nobody is kind. So what happens now? You're going to go and bring the water to your friend. When your friend will receive the water, at that point, he's kind. He gets it. And therefore, at that point, when your friend is kainet menahefker, the tchum will go according to him. You were never kainet. Rav Sheisha says, when you picked it up, when you drew the water for your friend was not kainet, but you were. So therefore, when you give it to your friend, he's receiving it from you. So therefore, it already was established that it's your tchum. Whereas Rav Nachman holds, not your friend was kaina when you drew it for him, not you were kaina. So when you give it to him, then your friend is kainet at that point, and then the tchum is established according to him. That's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. Comes out that really Rav Nachman and Rav Sheishus are arguing about a very fundamental concept in kinyanim. We know that, as I said, the kinyanim require kavanah. The question, though, is if you had the general kavanah to be kainah, but not the specific kavanah to be kainah for yourself, will you be kainah or not? Rav Nachman says you will not, and Rav Sheishus says you will. Taisus, however, there's a long Taisus, just Bekitzer, one point that he brings from the Rashbam, that the contradiction that Rashi asks from the Gemara in Bab Metzia is not a contradiction, because over there it's talking about Hamagbiya Metzia Lachaveirei. So if you're causing a loss to someone else that can't pick up this Metzia, there you're really causing a loss. This hefka item, this mitzvah, your friend will never be able to get if you're taking it away from him. So there Rav Nachman holds, loy kana chaveirei. Here we're talking about a pit of water that has a lot of water in it, and here Rav Nachman in fact will hold that you do have the right to create a kinyan for your friend, even though it's sort of causing a loss to someone else, because it's not a real loss. There's a lot of more water in the pit over here, and therefore he holds kana. So therefore Taisus actually sticks to the simple pshat of the Gemara that I said in the beginning.